morning for me, thank you.
Hello, Deb.
I love that. Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. No, my pleasure. These are, I don't know, I guess my name's been out in academia because this will be the second of 3. I have another one of these with another institution tomorrow. So this is my new calling, I guess.
Well, no surprise to us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're very kind. This is great. I'm seeing actual people now, not, beautiful posed shots, but it's good to see the real people.
So today is sponsored by the STEM Leaf Advance Grant. The goal of the grant is to reduce bias in the STEM fields, but whenever we can, we like to try and open it up to as many people as possible. Today is the second event in our virtual speaker series, and it'll be a fireside chat about what each of us can do at Clarkson to address racism with our guest speaker, Deb Elam. So now I'll turn it over to Laura Ettinger. She's a history professor here at Clarkson, and she's a PI on the STEM Leaf Advance Grant.
Sarah, thank you very much for starting us off. I am very honored to introduce Deb Elam. Deb was GE's first ever Black female corporate officer. Her role as Global Chief Diversity Officer placed her in the top 185 of 300,000 employees. After her 30-year career at GE, she launched Corporate Playbook, which is a business consulting firm that specializes in executive coaching and strategic solutions. And she received an honorary degree here at Clarkson in 2016. So I want to explain a little bit about how this is going to work. We are going to do this as a kind of fireside chat. I am going to start off by asking Deb a few questions about how we at Clarkson, we as faculty and staff at Clarkson, can address racism. And then I'm going to open it up to all of your questions. Deb, in a pre-meeting we had, Deb specifically said to feel free to ask those questions you're afraid to ask. And I think, let me just check again. Yeah, we have over 50 participants, which is wonderful. We had agreed if we have over 50, when we get to the question and answer period, I'm gonna have you use the raise hand function, and I will monitor, I'll monitor that. And as you probably know, if you click on participants at the bottom of your screen, that's where you'll see the raise hand. Raise hand is one of your options. And in the meantime, Sarah will be monitoring the chat. One other thing I want to mention is that the third part of this series will be on Friday, October 2nd at 2 p.m. when Tanya Odom, Global Diversity and Inclusion Educator, Coach, and Consultant, who kicked off our STEM Leaf Advance program in January, she will return to campus virtually. And we'll send out flyers about that and reminders about that for Friday, October 2nd. So Deb, welcome. Very glad to have you here from New Orleans.
Yes.
And where my namesake hurricane is hopefully not going to do too much damage.
Veering west.
So I'll start with, as I said, a couple, maybe 3 questions, and then open it up for others. Let me start with this one. As a white employee at Clarkson, I know that I should not be requiring my Black friends and colleagues, my friends and colleagues who are people of color, to figure out what I should do to address racism. But what does that mean, actually? Does that mean I don't have conversations about race with my friends and colleagues who are people of color? Would doing that, would having those conversations mean that I'd be requiring them to engage in emotional labor that I don't want to add to their plates? So we'll start with that.
Yeah, nice softball, right? Well, first of all, thank you all for having me. I'm very honored to be here. My time up in Potsdam was brief, but very impactful and very awesome. So thank you. I also am going to give one little caveat. Here in New Orleans, schools have gone back already. And so internet has been spotty at times. No issues today, but if I should blip out, I've told the planners to just tap dance or sing until I can log back in. So that's just my little caveat to start. You know, it's really interesting. So the question that you asked, there's no right or wrong answer. And most of the things we'll talk about today, there's no right or wrong answer. It's all sort of on a gradient. So if you are white and, you know, George Floyd was murdered, and we just had a situation last night, which is causing social unrest across the country. You know, I think for an African-American, seeing those visuals are very heavy. It's very heavy, it's very disturbing. It conjures up a lot of stuff. It conjures up fear, concern for family members, for self, depending on who you are and where you are. So it's like anything else that conjures up concern, anything. That's a level that's happening with a number of your Black and brown colleagues and students family members. So it's something of which to be aware. Now, I believe very much in authenticity. Authenticity is a big word for me because I think people respect people and will help people when you are truly being open and vulnerable and authentic in your quest to grow. So if you are simply saying, well, just give me all the answers. You know, I mean, you all are professors and instructors, so you know, give me all the answers is never really the right answer. It's, can you lean in and do some of the work, and then maybe I can clarify for you. You know, you never have a student that you want to come to you in a meeting after class to say, well, just tell me what the answer is. You want them to seek and think and grow this. Am I making sense? Not if you can, because I can't hear you guys, but you know, you want people to do some of the work themselves, and then I can help, then I can clarify, then I'm happy to have a conversation with you, but don't sort of lay it on the person. You know, the other thing I would say about that, and I've said this to whites, Blacks, Asian, male, female, there's a concept of grace that I think is very, very important in these conversations. And grace means giving people leeway to be imperfect in the conversation, to be clunky, to not have all the right phrases and the right nomenclature, but to be able to convey the message that it's open and it's safe to convey. Here's what I'm really trying to do. And I think the more you are authentic and open to say, look, I'm disturbed by what happened over the summer, and I've been trying to process it all summer. And here's what I've done. I've read a few books. I've watched TV. I've talked to people. Whatever I've done, but I'm still a little shaken. I'm still a little unclear. Would it be okay if we could talk about this from time to time? Because I really want to grow from where I am and understand and be a part of the solution.
Thank you very much, Deb. That's very helpful. So my second question is, how do I have tough conversations with both colleagues and students about race, especially in the age of Zoom, which, you know, in one way it can bring people together, right, more easily from long distances, but in other ways I think can make things a lot harder. So again, how do I have tough conversations with colleagues and students about race, especially in the age of Zoom?
You know, I think developing skills to have tough conversations as a leader about anything is important, right? We all have to have tough conversations with our kids, with our spouse, I mean, with family members. So adding race in, don't add race in as something that makes it crazy. Just think about any challenging conversation you've had to have with anybody on any topic. How do you prepare for that? First of all, you think about what you're going to say. You show up prepared. You don't just sort of wing it. I think, again, authenticity, I'll go back to that. Coming from a place of, you know, I really want to learn. I really want to understand. Or even, I really don't agree with this. Here's why. People will talk to you if you, even if they don't agree, if you come from a standpoint of, I just want to understand, I want to grow, I want to learn. I think you've got to be really clear about what the conversation's about and not fuzzy. The worst thing in the world is to sort of dance around stuff, because people will find you out if you're dancing around. But, you know, and I think you mentioned with Zoom, quite frankly, I think Zoom does one thing, and I'll share this with you guys. It's funny. So I have this on gallery view right now. So I'm seeing, you know, a whole screen full of little boxes. And what's interesting about this is I've done a lot of these. It's be aware when you're on Zoom of your facial expression. Because if you're in a classroom and you have a facial expression about something, 9 out of 10 times, most people won't see it. Only somebody looking directly at you is going to see that. But because I'm looking at everybody right now, anybody who kind of does this or rolls their eyes, I can see that. It's very visible. So as instructors, a couple of you are chuckling. See, I see you laughing. It's important on anything that you do that you be aware of the technology and how it projects you on the screen and your reactions to anything. But again, I think the same rules apply in terms of being very clear, very straightforward. And sometimes you got to say, you know what, maybe I don't get it. I need to think a little bit more. Is there something else I can read to understand more? Is there something else I can do? You know, start with self. Starting with self and self-improvement is always, I think, a good way to open the dialogue.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
But I see, I want you to know, I see all of your expressions right now.
Yeah, people can't get away with stuff on Zoom, right?
That's right.
They can hide in the classroom. So I think I'll just ask one more question and then I will, I'm going to open this up to the faculty and staff who are on this call. And I see that there are about 60 people on the call right now. So we will use the raise hand function when we get there and I'll monitor that. But let me ask you one more question for now, Deb. I and probably many other faculty and staff on this call have read about and heard different definitions of equality versus equity. Could you talk about your definitions of those two terms, equality and equity? And also, can you say a little bit about how I might apply those in my job here at Clarkson? And again, we've got faculty and staff on the call, so people with a lot of different kinds of jobs.
Sure. No, it's a great question. So it's interesting because the two phrases, unfortunately, get used interchangeably and they're very related, but they're really not the same thing. So if you think about equality, the root word of equality is equal. And what does equal mean? It means the same. You know, most of us grew up with everybody's created equally. Everybody's equal. You know, if you've got kids and you want to make life easy for yourself, you know, give every kid a lollipop. Every kid in the house gets one lollipop. It's easy. You don't even have to think about it. You're making it equal. It's fair. That's what we all learned. And there's a role for equality. Equity is making sure that people have what they need to have, what they're supposed to have, what's going to make them better, what's going to get to the ultimate goal of going from survive to thrive. So let me give you an example. Do I have any, and just raise your hand. Any gardeners, any people like gardening out there? I got a couple of hands, few hands. Okay, if you like gardening. So think about this. Think about the garden in your yard. And if you have a flower garden, you could have one flower, one type of flower. So let's say if you had tulips, and I don't know what grows up in Potsdam, but let's say if you had tulips. So if you've got beautiful yellow tulips, I happen to like tulips, beautiful tulips. They are gorgeous, they're blooming, they're perfect. Now, what you might do to have more interest in the garden is to have different color tulips. You might have red and yellow and, you know, a deeper pink or whatever of tulips. So that gives a little more interest. But then if you want to really make it more interesting, you might have different kinds of flowers. So you've got different colored tulips, but then you've got chrysanthemums and daisies and mums and other things. And if you have that, if you know gardening, those flowers bloom at different times. So by having real diversity in the types of flowers and the colors of flowers, you can almost plan to have color in your yard year round. Now I know up in upstate New York, that's not really going to work, but you get the point of where I'm going with that. Here's the analogy. If you gave all of those flowers, if you treated them equally, if you gave them all the same sunlight, all the same nutrients, all the same amount of water, some of them are going to die. A few of them are going to thrive. Some of them are just flat out going to die. And some of them are going to meander along. But if you looked at them as individuals and what they need to thrive, to create the beauty in your garden, and gave them the right amount of nutrient, the right amount of sunlight, the right amount of water, that's the goal. That is equity. It is meeting people where they are and ensuring that you do what you need to do from a leadership standpoint to help them thrive. So that I always find is a good example because you can kind of visualize that and you could see where it would go. The last time I shared that story, someone shared with me, they said, well, don't forget about the flower that shows up that's already withered. The flower that's been through so much that it starts out really withered. And sometimes you really may need to do a little bit extra there. And that's a really good point, particularly as you think about students who may be from marginalized backgrounds or home socioeconomic situations that are not the same as your own. Did I answer your question? Did that make sense? Okay,
absolutely answered my question.
Yes, thank you.
You absolutely answered my question. Thank you very much. At this point, what I'd like to do is open it up to questions from people in this group, and you can use the raise hand function, and I will see them here. I see Amber has a hand up. So Amber, why don't you ask your question?
All right, Amber.
All right. Thank you so much for being here with us, Deb. We appreciate it. My question is actually, it's based on some recent experiences. Now, I have done a lot of reading. I've been watching a lot of videos, trying to do all the self-teaching and learning. But in a couple of recent conversations with family and with close friends, I have found myself in the moment not being able to say what I mean to say or respond in the way that I really hope that I'm able to eventually learn how to respond. So I guess my question is more about how can I get better in the moment, and how can I maybe stop missing these opportunities?
Great question. Look, this is not, if you're at the beginning of the journey, it takes a while to get fluid. It's like anything else, right? If you're in a math kind of curriculum, you can't go from arithmetic to advanced calculus in 2 months. You know, you've got to continue to work at it, and then things become much more natural. Your aptitude starts to kick in. Your comfort with the subject matter. It's no different. Diversity is no different. So one thing is to practice with people who are like-minded, again, who will allow you to be imperfect in the conversation. Find a couple of people that may be your practice buddies, your cohort, to say, look, is this okay? Is this right? Is that the right thing I should call this? I mean, do that. One book that I've recommended to a number of my clients is White Fragility. Why is it so hard for us to talk about race? And so it is written by Robin DiAngelo. If somebody wants to type that in the chat so you can see it, Robin DiAngelo, White Fragility. I bought the book myself. I downloaded it actually on an audiobook about 1.5 years ago. I think it came out about 1.5 years, maybe close to 2 years ago. And I listened to it while walking. And it was very, very provocative. Post George Floyd, I actually ordered a copy so I could annotate it because it is written from the standpoint of a white woman talking to white people about why is it so hard for us white people to talk about race. And her premise, I don't know this to be a fact, but it's written almost as though it may be a doctoral thesis, just because she uses a lot of data and examples. But the premise of it is being white is like a fish in water. If you grow up in this country white just is. White is the norm. White is the standard. Anything else that's not white is different, is deviant, is a challenge, could be a problem. So white people don't really think about themselves as being in a race. You know, you may reflect yourself. Like, when did you first think about being part of a race? You know, I suspect many of you never thought about yourself as being part of a race. Whereas I think about myself as being part of a race. I don't remember ever not thinking about myself as being a part of a race. So anyway, check out the book. It's one that I think is actually very good. And from the standpoint of academics and people who like data and like, you know, research, I think you would find it enlightening.
Thank you very much, Deb. Robin, I see you have your hand up.
Hey, Robin.
Quickly. So I wanted to ask a question, because as we start as an academic institution, right, we're all trying to think of how do we integrate this moment in time to really transform the way we teach and the way we educate. So there's been conversations about, you know, changing the canon in our classrooms and decolonizing the curriculum, and you know, as a native person myself, you know, obviously decolonizing the curriculum has different meanings for some people than others, right? But trying to, how do we even begin to look at our own disciplines, particularly in science and math and engineering, and really look at how we teach and the constructs around which we teach that are actually exclusionary in some way?
Yeah, thanks, Robin. That's a great, I love your backdrop. That's a great question. You know, what I think you've got to do, and again, none of this is easy, but I think given the game that you guys are in, which is educating our youth and educating people and training future leaders, it's imperative. I think what you've got to do is basically think about expanding the tent, expanding the net. You know, as you think about your curriculum for this year and you use examples, you know, are there other examples that you could use? Are there mathematicians? There are Black mathematicians. There are female mathematicians. There are Black and female and Asian and Latina, Latinx, if you will, and Native American who've been scientists. So it may take some research on your part. It may be a project that you assign to your students and have them report out. But you got to just expand the tent around examples, because when people, I have a belief that, you know, you think about Black Lives Matter, right? And what that really means if you sort of say it. But what's fascinating to me is people value things that they think are valuable. If they see examples where something is valuable, they value it. So if you never see examples of women or people of color contributing to society, contributing to your disciplines, it's hard to value that, because you don't ever think, well, what did they do? What did they contribute? But if on the other hand, you see examples, so I'm in New Orleans right now, the birthplace of jazz. Well, people value jazz here, Black, white, men, women, because you see examples of all kinds of people contributing to the genre. So my suggestion to you is do some research, expand the tent, and figure out where are there places that I can put examples in, where are there speakers that I can bring in to expound upon that. There's a group, the name of the group is not important, but my kids were in an organization. I have two daughters in their early 20s when they were little, called Jack and Jill. So Jack and Jill is an African-American mothers organization. It's a national organization to support our kids. And one of the, and every month, a mother takes the lead on an activity, age-appropriate activity. And so one mother during Black History Month asked the children to take the lead on researching someone who is Black, who is involved in something that you really care about, that you really like. And at the time, both my daughters were competitive figure skaters. They were for many years. And I was not aware, you know, pre-Debbie Thomas, of any Black figure skaters, but they found a couple who had competed at the national level. And so for them, what they saw was just like a ray of light. It changed them. It really transformed. They're like, wow, I can really do this. So I think you just got to cast the net wider. Think of places and inflection points in your curriculum where you give examples, and look up those examples. And again, maybe the students can do some of the research with you. Hope that answers your question.
Deb, thank you very much. Shimona, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, Deb. Thank you for being with us. I have this question for a long time. I'm from India. So I came here as a PhD student, and from that time I'm here. So I always wonder, like, how kids are taught in elementary, middle, and high school level about racism and different ethnicities, because I strongly believe that your learning starts at an early age and from home.
Yeah, so I think that varies greatly across the country, depending on what school system you're in, where you are, who the teacher is. It varies greatly. It's not done enough. I'm consulting right now to a school, a K through 12 girls Catholic school. And one of the work streams that we have work streams on admissions and academics and athletics or whatever, you know, alumni development. But one of the work streams is focused on exactly that. How do we go from pre-K to 12th grade to see what is being taught, what's missing? How can we fill in the gaps? The other thing that's interesting, I did a similar kind of conversation with the leadership team for Pearson. And, you know, Pearson does academic books. I don't know if they do college level, but it's certainly K through 12. They publish a lot of books. And one of the things I said to them is, I said, you guys need to do a stock inventory, first of all, to ensure you don't have anything in your books that are openly racist. And secondly, that you at least are doing something to enhance the conversation, because this is what's in the hands of kids. And interestingly, one of the guys sitting around the table, because it was guys sitting around the table, said that they had actually gotten a call from a school district because something in one of the books was very disturbing, and so they needed to pull it, and it was going to cause a problem. So it varies greatly. I mean, you're going to be meeting some kids. So interestingly, I have a theory. One of the reasons, whenever a university has a Black history class or African American history class, it fills up with Black kids because they didn't get it in high school. So they're interested in it, they're drawn to it, and they realize, wow, I missed so much. So I think your question is just spot on. We're not going to solve it today, but I think it's spot on. It's a great observation.
And just a follow-up question, how it is different in rural and urban areas in this country? Like, are they differently taught, or it's like same?
No. What I would say is, and I'm on the board of a charter school in New Orleans, actually. So what I would say is it varies. The variation is almost infinite, and it's not literally, but it very much depends on the school district. When I ran the GE Foundation, we did a lot of funding of K through 12 curriculums. That's why I actually know a little bit more about this than the average person. One of the things we funded, just as an example, was curriculum let's say in a particular district being standardized, because you had students who were from truly lower socioeconomic backgrounds who were very transient. Let's say the parents couldn't pay the rent here, had to move to another school, and then the kid is behind because what they're teaching at this school and the school previously are two different things. And so we did a lot of funding to at least say in a city, in a greater metropolitan area, you know, if it's January and it's 11th grade, you know, plus or minus a week or so, you should be on this. So, but the variance is it's astronomical. Does anybody disagree? I mean, one of you may have more data, but that's my observation. And it depends on resources. You know, you have some school districts that have a lot more resources than others. They can take more field trips. They can do more things that give more real life example to the educational situation.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Jen Knack has her hand raised. Jen.
Hi, Deb. Thank you so much for being here. Already learning a lot and taking a lot of notes. So I guess my question is kind of twofold. And I'll start by saying that in the classroom, I often spend a lot of time, especially in the beginning of the semester, kind of doing a song and dance about if I'm here, or I'm here if you need me, come to office hours, come to student hours. Come talk to me afterwards, send me an email, come to Zoom. Like, there's all these ways that you can access me. And here's all the things that I can help you with based on your academics and career trajectory. And I feel like with everything going on right now in the US in particular, with the Black Lives Matter movement and protests that are happening right here in Potsdam, and a lot of the turmoil that's happening, I want to offer that support to my students of color and Black students in particular, as well as to some of my colleagues. But I'm unsure about what it means to be offering support sometimes, and then how to even offer that I'm there for support if they want it, right? In part because I recognize that, you know, I have different relationships with different people. Some people I'm really close with and can just call up and say, you know, this thing happened last night, I wanted to check in. But then other folks where, you know, I might just see them in the hallway, we're more acquaintances or kind of more professional. And so I'm just not sure if you have anything that you might be able to offer there, and maybe even more especially with students, you know, how do we help bridge that gap of helping them feel supported and welcome in our classrooms and at our university, knowing that there's varying levels of closeness and relationships, and then how do we send that message?
Wow, that's a long question. again, I will start with what I always start with, which is authenticity. Really your genuine interest in supporting, helping. I cannot stress enough how much authenticity comes through as a baseline, as a starting point. Beyond that, with students, I think leaning in with them more one-on-one. So think about my analogy about the flowers. You may need to, for some of your students, lean in a little bit more, where it's not just the blanket, you know, here's my office hours, here's my time, here's my availability. It may be, hey, you know, Sarah, you know, hey, I'd love to just chat with you for a few minutes after class. And it may be, look, I just wanted to let you know that I'm here to support, just something that's a little bit more to draw them in. Because a lot of times students who are, and you know this, who are not feeling necessarily as comfortable and maybe as welcomed, just maybe reticent to, you know, they hear it, they got it, and they're reticent. And then we step back and say, well, I gave them all the information. So this may be a time where you've got to think about that flower that may be a little more wilted when it comes out of the ground, and you may need to do a little bit more. That's one thought. With regard to colleagues, I think it's, you know, listen, be attentive. Don't be judgmental. You know, that's the one thing that will shut down a conversation faster than anything else, is if you say, yeah, but, you know, just take yeah, but out of your conversation. Nobody wants to hear yeah, but anymore right now. Just listen. Just, yeah, but it's like, oh, nope, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I think the listening, I think the active listening, and then the follow-up, you know. Hey, like you said, I just wanted to check in. And maybe somebody just say, look, you know, we work here together. We don't know each other very well. You know, I've been thinking a lot over the summer. Boy, that thing happened last night or night before last in Wisconsin. I'm really struggling with it. And I just wanted to reach out and let you know that as a colleague here, I'm perplexed, I'm dismayed, I'm heavy about it as well. Sometimes just sharing where you are may be a good starting point.
Thank you very much, Deb.
Sure.
Sheena Matthews, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, Deb. I've already learned a lot. You've already given me some good language and good thoughts, and thank you for that. Since you're letting us ask difficult questions, one thing that I would love some advice about is when to say something and offer help, and when to let people deal with it on their own, not like assuming that you should come to the rescue. So, I mean, I'll just share an instance of something that happened to me. I went to like a protest that was being organized, and there's a Black woman who's organizing it very capably, and there was a white woman who was taking over the conversation. And I wondered if I should say something, but I don't know either of them that well. And I didn't say anything. And then when I walked away later, I heard some other people being like, oh yeah, that person took over. And I thought to myself, maybe I should have said something, but I didn't. And as Jen was saying, if I knew someone really well, that's a different situation. Maybe I would know what they would prefer and not prefer. But in a situation where you don't really know people well, do you have any advice for saying you'd like to be supportive, but not assuming that anyone needs your help?
Well, look, I think, you know, again, there's no right or wrong answers, right? It's gray. And so it's a judgment call. Just like so think about if that conversation were not about a protest or whatever, it was just about anything, you know, that's always a judgment call. One thing I might have done, I'm just trying to put myself in that situation. I might have said to the woman who was organizing initially, I guess I got the sense it was the Black woman, hey, is there anything I can do to be helpful? Just say, I don't want to, and maybe what you do is almost, sometimes you can mimic the person who's sort of taking over a little bit, to sort of say, you know, look, the last thing I want to do is take over, because clearly you have this in hand. But if there's something I can do to be helpful, let me know. Otherwise, I am just here to support. And if you kind of get a knowing nod, that might just say, she may be saying, thank you, Jesus, you know? So it's hard. I don't have a right or wrong answer for it. I think it's a judgment call. Sometimes you just got to lean in, especially if you don't know either person well at all. But just, you know, just saying, hey, look, I'm just here to support. I don't want to jump in. I don't want to take over. I want to do whatever it's what I do, what I tell people whenever someone, let's say, has lost a family member or something like that. I have a standard phrase that I say, what can I do to be helpful to you? please tell me what I can do to be helpful to you. Because that could vary by person. It may be, I don't want you to do anything. I don't want you to say anything. And maybe, yeah, I need you to come over and, call people for me, whatever it is. But what is it that I can do to be most helpful?
That's great. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Deb. That question seems like it's good for so many different things, including this moment. Stephanie Shuckers has her hand up. Stephanie.
Hey, Stephanie, how are you? You got to unmute, Stephanie.
Sorry, I double muted.
That's okay.
How about now?
Yeah, I can.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I've been helping with this NSF grant we have for supporting women faculty, which is what hosted this event. And so we have this grant for 3 years. And part of the grant is, the concept of intersectionality. And so we have struggled with how the things that we do can focus on the particular intersectionality part. And in some sense, with everything, going on with Black Lives Matter, it gave us this opportunity to then have the seminar series, which is why we're doing it, because there's a lot of tension, a lot of interest, I think, on individuals' parts to take action. So my question is, just a little history, is like, so we have a kind of a platform and some funding to do more things, and so, when you think about things that can make an impact, we have 50, 60 people here today, thank you everyone for attending, right? What kinds of suggestions might you have? And I can throw one out, at least because I know you said come to the table with things, so I can throw out that one of the things that kind of came out of the last seminar that we had was related to creating social opportunities, because if you know people socially, that might help you with those hard conversations later, because you have, better interconnections, and that, some social things are really easy, particularly, like if it's in your department, right? Or, in certain situations, but some sort of campus-wide social is a little harder if you don't know different people. So, so if you have ideas there, of course, it's even trickier with Zoom, or, maybe something completely different that you might have ideas on how we can make a difference as an organization in doing anti-racist action. I hope that's helpful. Backdrop.
What else have you guys, what else is on your list? You said social things, so that meaning social things with faculty and staff, or say more about at least what that.
Well, we're not doing anything social specifically, except we do have, right, yeah, I mean, well, especially now, but we do have a women's faculty luncheon, that we're hosting once a semester. So that's the social thing that we've been doing. The other things that the grant is doing are leadership training. Then we have something called Advocates and Allies, which is a men's group. I don't know if you've heard of this program. For same idea, helping, build, allies amongst the community. And I think the idea of being a men's only group is to be able to ask hard questions, and really learn and be open in the events that they hold. And then we're reviewing our policies and practices across the board, and then we'll be focusing on some of them and making changes where needed. And then professional development, which is kind of what this bucket is the seminar series is related. So we have multi-pronged approaches of the things we're tackling so far. But it just occurred to me, we talked, it's sort of like actions we can take. In your experience, and you've worked with other universities before, what kind of impactful actions have you seen?
Yeah. So one of the clients that I had was that I had for a couple of years, University of Louisiana system. So it's 9 universities in the state of Louisiana, small universities, most of them in rural areas. one HBCU, Grambling State University. And it's interesting. So one of the things they did that I thought was impactful, they had a diversity summit for faculty and staff. It was about a 5-hour day. So people, again, different universities could drive in, some went the night before, but it gave them a chance. We had work groups. So we used sort of the GE methodology of workout, meaning, you got to come with the problem, wrap it, think about what things could we tackle. So in 4 hours, they at least had a couple of recommendations on things. That was very impactful because it forced people to work together in groups on topics that had been pre-assigned. So like, for example, one of the things that came out of it was for many students, as they were trying to attract more diverse students, they needed to have kids. So many of the kids that come to these schools were resource constrained. And so in Louisiana, there's a big scholarship fund if you score a certain amount on the ACT. There's the ACT here, not SAT. There's a certain amount of state dollars that you get, which are critical for kids. So there's a group of kids, let's say, who did really well in high school, but maybe just missed this cutoff. Not kids who were really a long way, but just missed this cutoff. So one of the things they talked about was, could we offer some training? Actually, we're going to do it via webinar. This is pre-COVID. Could we do some trainings for some select students that might come here to get them over that hump? Because if you get them over that hump, they get enough dollars so that they don't have to work a workload with a job to pay for college. Does that make sense? So the point of it is the fact that they came together, they could see some solutions that I think they couldn't see just working individually. So one thing might be hold a diversity summit, which is a half-day piece that has working sessions. Again, hopefully COVID is over with at some point here in the next couple of months, but maybe it's something you plan for the spring. It was very good. They had a nice inspirational speaker, but the working group sessions were actually very, very good. That's something you could do. The other thing you might do, and again, I don't know how your grant's structured, but this whole concept of examples that you might weave into your curriculum. If you put some money behind having some students, maybe student groups, research examples and give them targeted areas, because kids are good at research and stuff, and then create a repository of examples that you could share. If you're teaching engineering, who are famous female engineers that discovered stuff, or Black engineers who have, I have a couple of former friends at GE who have 20, 30 patents, one guy in particular who's Black. So get some research done, have a reservoir of examples that you guys, as you're teaching, could pull from to use in your curriculum.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you for those practical examples from your experience. Much appreciated.
Sure.
Lisa Hayes, I see you have your hand up.
I do. Hi, Deb. Thank you for being here. This is
wonderful.
So this sort of aligns with Jenna Matthews' question, but on the opposite end. So what do you feel would be the best way to approach someone that we feel is being insensitive or non-supportive? I think that sometimes out of fear, we just walk away from it, even though we witness it. So do you have any advice on how to approach faculty, staff, students that we feel, again, are, insensitive and non-supportive of Black Lives Matter or any other
lives?
Any other lives.
I think that depends on whether it's a faculty, staff person, or student, because you could have students in that bucket too. I've certainly run into that. I think you start out, again, from a place of grace, from a place of all intentions are good. So that's the starting point. I would probably do it one-on-one and say, hey, you kind of said that in there, and I saw so-and-so's reaction, and their reaction was a bit tough. So maybe, you want to think about how that came across. So again, I always use the staying away from action and focus on intention. I'm sure it wasn't your intention, but here's how I observed it. So you put it back on you. Here's how I observed it. Here's how I experienced it. Here's how I heard it. Not saying that's what you intended to do or say, but here's how I received it. Nobody can argue with how you receive something. So, and then from there, you got to just play it out, right? I mean, if the person's a jerk and says, well, yeah, that's what I intended, say, well, you know what, that's just not good. And then you got other things you got to do from a university standpoint with how you deal with that. But I always start from a standpoint of good intention. You know, here's how I heard that. I'm sure it's probably not what you intended, but here's how I experienced it. So you just might want to think about that in the future. I would start very much one-on-one. Nobody wants to be embarrassed. Nobody wants to be called out. I would really do it one-on-one.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
And just FYI, one other add to that. So my way of doing that, this is Deb's way, because Deb is comfortable with it, is I can be a little bit passive-aggressive, sarcastic, if you will. So I might make a joke that's clearly not really a joke. It's not a ha-ha joke about something that I observe and say, boy, that was a lot, you know. I might do that in the moment, because depending on what the situation is, it at least lets the recipient know, or if it's a student know, that I heard it, I caught it, I'm not okay with it. But then the follow-up question might be one-on-one with whoever the offender is.
Thank you, Deb. I don't see other hands right now, but I want to give people, I have other questions if others don't, but
I don't know what's
Laura, could I go?
Go, yes.
So Deb, I'm hoping you can help me. This is kind of a sharing a frustration. You just mentioned Black Lives Matter, and you know that's important to us on this campus, as all campuses. And inevitably, and you just said it in a joking way, you raise the issue, or it's raised to you, why do you support Black lives? And then you get this rhetorical, well, all lives matter. Like, I can get kind of, you know, past that one, but now I find that, well, if you support Black lives, then look at the rioting, look at everything that's happening. You always, the conversation, for those that need the most honest and direct conversation, they deflect. They deflect all lives, or they deflect to look at the you know, the looting and the burning that they're supporting. And,
yeah.
And it's so hard to get them back to the big issue that you really want the discussion about. You know, because they go to all these peripheral things, and
yes.
That's my frustration. You've got any suggestion about how to bring the topic back to the one that needs to be discussed?
Well, yeah, I think it's a frustrating topic for everyone. I was saying before all of you got on the call that I was so honored to receive my honorary degree from Clarkson, along with the 3 women who launched Black Lives Matter. You know, and I don't know how much you all have told that story, but you know, you have a legacy to build upon as these matters happen that a lot of universities do not, because you stepped out and did that. You know, and I'm sure it had some controversy to it, but the point is you did it. So you've got a story to tell that a lot of schools don't. That's A. B, here's an analogy that I use with that. You know, if a fire truck comes into my block right now, you know, because they were called, and they're gonna douse all the houses. Yes, douse all the houses with water and the repellent, because all of the houses are important. But at this moment in time, there's one house that's just a little bit more important than the others, and that's the one that's burning. And that's how I think about the Black lives. If you look at George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, et cetera, that's the house that's burning right now. So yes, that one may be just a hair more important than the others at this moment in time. Some people you are not going to convince. What I would also say, I'm very big on nomenclature and description. So while some people may say riot, and some things are riots, some things are peaceful protests. There was a lot of peaceful protests going on in June and July, a lot of peaceful protests. I in no way condone rioting of any kind or violence of any kind, really. I understand it. I don't agree with it at all. I don't support it, but I understand it, because the frustration level is so high when you continue to see situations happen like the ones I referenced, and then what happened just 2 or 3 nights ago. It really does make you wonder, and it really does have people in this country and Black people afraid. I mean, I and I don't want to get emotional about this, but I cannot tell you, and this is just a personal sharing, how thankful I am that I did not give birth to sons. You know, I thank God about that every night, that I did not give birth to sons, and my daughters are not safe in some regard. But that's a sad commentary, but that's my reality and the reality of many people who look like me. So the other thing I would say, with the clients I've dealt with this summer in particular, one of the things I've realized, and this was with, well, I realized it this summer, but I also realized it post Trayvon Martin. Post Trayvon Martin, I was still at GE. We had the Black officers. There were, I don't know, 10 of us. We had a meeting with our chairman and the vice chairman and head of HR and somebody else. And so we were just talking about what was going on. And I sort of took a step back and I said, you know, it finally hit me what is going on in this conversation. And they said, what do you mean? I said, what I realize is you guys, the white people in the room, you actually believe that this Trayvon Martin thing is happening somewhere else. You think it's happening to some other people somewhere else, in some other town, someplace across the tracks, with some people who are sketchy. I said, what you don't realize, what you're hearing for the first time is this is happening to us. This is happening to the person you're going to have a conference call with in an hour. This is happening to the person whose cubicle is down the hall. And so by having people share, when they're willing to share, what their experiences are, and that's what I did with some clients this summer. Nordstrom is a big client. We had Black and brown employees, just, I mean, leaders in the company talk about, yeah, the police rolled up on me standing in front of my house that I own, that I pay the mortgage on, you know, saying, what are you doing here? And I think there was just this shock because it personalizes it. It says, wow, this isn't like some other people. These are the people we know. Like, it can't be happening to you. So that's a tactic sometimes that I've used with clients to say, just to really personalize the issue versus something that they're just watching on a screen on TV.
Yeah, one issue we have up here is profiling while driving. And
yeah.
That's an issue I try to, you know, that's one that people I think can understand. I try to bring the conversation back. You understand that's happening in our region, in our county, in our town.
Yeah.
So the personalization is, I thank you. I'll reinforce my thinking, at least on that one. It's so hard.
Because if it's somebody that you sit in the pew with at church, next to at church every Sunday, you're like, well, he's a really nice guy. Like, what are you talking about? And then let him say, yeah, I've been stopped 3 times.
Right. Yep. Thank you.
Sure. No problem.
Thank you very much, Deb. We've got a question from Amanda Pickering. And then after that, I'm guessing we might have time for 1 or 2 more questions, just keeping the time in mind.
Surely.
So, Amanda.
Thanks, Laura. I'll be brief because I know we're running out of time. Thank you, Deb, for being here. Working with students in the trenches for years, you know, and having a background and experience with that, my question relates to a bigger issue that I've had to, that I've struggled with over the years. And you know, we recognized here that that there's a lot of support within Clarkson, and I do believe that we have moved the needle with the leadership, Tony, Jen Ball's area, the STEM grant, and our individual work with students. But what perplexes me, and something that I still struggle with, is that we create this opportunity for students at Clarkson, and you know, we build in these opportunities, supporting, advocating, and at the end of the day, they go out into this job market and a society that doesn't have that same level of support that we've provided at Clarkson. And I had a student, a Black male student of mine, that reached back to me and, you know, said to me, AP, it's not supposed to be like this. And I went into my counseling mode in reminding him of his resilience and all the accomplishments that he's had in his life, and you can do this. But I came away from that phone call feeling like I had failed him, or the university had failed him, because there's still a gap in what we, how we work with these students to conquer the world, and then we send them out into this big bad world without that same level of support. Can you speak to those of us who are working with our students and find that gap in their experience from being at a college setting like Clarkson and putting them out into the world?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that might tie back into how you might use some of the resources from your grant. You know, one of the a couple of the universities that I was dealing with a year ago had wraparound programs, like real programs that brought in Black alums, Black people from the community, just to sort of talk about here's how it is. So that real candid rap session to really help them understand when you transition out, here's what the world is. It may not be the world we all want it to be, but here's what the world is. And here's how you might think about dealing with different situations. And so there was a Black male initiative in particular because the numbers for Black females was actually rising. The number for Black males entering college was quite alarming, at least in this particular university system. But you know, you may want to just look at your programming. So don't feel like you failed. You know, nobody's a failure. You got him out of school, you got him into the workforce. You did not fail. You know, the question is, how do you take that learning and make it better for the next group of students? But you may want to just look at your wraparound programming. You know, is there something that you can do? You know, there's programs like for example, the Jackie Robinson Scholars. I don't know if you all are familiar with them or if you have any of their students. Jackie Robinson Foundation has a program that's been going on forever that when you're selected into the program, every summer you get placed, you know, that you're in school at a company, but they provide a lot of wraparound mentoring and workshops and all kinds of stuff like that. So maybe it's something that you start with when they're freshmen, you know, that you do with your diverse students, that you provide some wraparound. So by graduation, maybe they're a little bit more prepared, a little bit more braced to deal with the unfortunate realities of the world.
Thank you very much. I see we just have a few minutes left, so I want to thank you so much.
You have one. I think you just have one person.
Oh wait, one question. Augustine, I missed you. Augustine, go ahead.
That's my maiden name, so we got to hear from you.
Well, thank you. I have one specific question regarding white space. And you had indicated white people don't look at themselves as having a race. It's like a fish in water. Mm-hmm. That almost normatively claims all the water as white space. So any action in that space from a non-white normatively would actually evoke kind of territoriality. So how do you navigate white space when, especially in the North Country, the vast majority of the space is normatively white, without feeling like you're intruding, but at the same time without having the other person, feel like they're being, like put into a zero-sum game kind of situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so again, I would encourage you, because I'm not going to answer that fully in the couple of minutes we have left, but I would encourage you to read the book, or if you don't read the book, Robin DiAngelo has a TED Talk out there on YouTube. So I would encourage you to look at that, but because it's a great way of understanding it, right? So the universal answer is, once you know better, you can do better. And so I think equipping yourself with the knowledge of what that means, and she does it in a masterful way as a white woman writing to other white people. So once you read this, you're a little more enlightened. The people I know who've read it have said, Deb, this is a really tough book, but I'm really glad I read it. And then you're more enlightened, and then you're more prone to be aware, and your actions will change. That's probably my best answer for now, but thank you for the question.
Thank you.
All right, back to
Augustine, thank you for the question, and Deb, for your answer, and for taking the time to share your experience and wisdom with us, and for being so authentic with us. And I'm so pleased that there were, at the height, over 60 people on this call. I know that there are so many of us at this university who want to work to make things better, not only in the world and in Potsdam, but here at Clarkson. So thank you all very much. Look for advertisements about the third part of this series, which will be on Friday, October 2nd at 2 p.m. with Tanya Odom, who kicked off the STEM Leaf Advanced program. She's a global diversity consultant and coach.
She's great. I know her. She's great.
She is. So Deb, again, thank you so much. I learned a lot from you, and I'm guessing a lot of other people on this call did.
Thank you. And I think you want people to fill out the survey too.
We do, yes. Thank you for the reminder. Sarah Trupto, our STEM Leaf Advanced Director, put a link to the survey. Actually, Sarah, can you put that up one more time? Because I see people are being nice and thanking us, but make sure and have it up there so that people fill out this survey. That would really help us with the grants so that we get that information. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you all for having me. It's been a pleasure. Let me know if I can be helpful in any way.